I live here in New Jersey, but I've been a part of CCI for 6.5 years. And I'm going to go with the segue that Jean just gave me about extreme heat to just talk about the perspective right now that I'm coming from. And that is, as I said, I've worked in CCI for 6 years, and I'm coming from right now, what's called a schools campaign perspective, specifically looking at the fact that schools need to pay so much money to be able to protect their students and their communities from extreme heat impacts, due to various reasons, right? Because buildings are aging. There's reasons besides, just pure extreme temperatures, but extreme temperature is definitely part of it. And we know that increases in temperature are directly attributable to fossil fuel companies. Um, so I'm just gonna go through a few visuals with you to kind of introduce what it is that we do and why I asked you about make polluters pay. And thanks for giving me your perspectives because I hope to loop in some of your experiences into this bit of a conversation today. Again, national nonprofit organization. We're funded by private foundations. And we know that big oil has lied about their products for many decades. And we help communities hold them accountable, as John said, and a couple others said, for their knowledge and for the deception. So we are uniquely focused on that. And we have the easy job because all we have to do is expose the documents that already existed from the industry itself on what they knew and how they lied. This is our three-prong approach, exposing the lies that others dug up. So really all the way from arguably the end of 1950s and early 60s for sure. Documents from American Petroleum Institute and then different leading companies that showed exactly what they have known in great detail. So we expose those documents, make sure people know about them, and we also are experts in the content there. And we also help with financial language, being able to speak about these climate impacts in cost amounts. And we do that work in collaboration with engineering firms. It takes a long time and investment, and we know that a lot of folks have asked for that in terms of local elected officials, county officials. And it's really hard to do it. I mean, cost assessment is a cost in itself. So people have really enjoyed that service that we have. It's been helpful to them in terms of, for example, what Jean said, being able to calculate what cooling schools actually looks like in terms of dollar amounts. So it helps people plan better. And then we also advocate for what we call climate accountability. Make polluters pay is the a term we're using across the country, like generally with lots of other organizations beside us who have different tools in the climate accountability umbrella. But it basically means holding these companies accountable for their contributions to the climate crisis. These documents, these hundreds and hundreds of pages that were uncovered by journalists and researchers that show that fossil companies knew as early as the 60s that burning fossil fuels would raise the global temperatures and lead to catastrophic climate change, and confirming that fossil fuel consumption would create dramatic environmental effects before the year 2050, which we're scarily close to. And that climate change as a result of their own products would require costly adaptations and drastically changing the way we all live and work, which we're starting to feel right about now. So speaking of right about now, and also speaking of New Jersey, back to my friends Gianna and Sam in Jersey, here's a fun fact. The Exxon Research and Engineering Division used to be in Linden, which is like 20 minutes from me in Linden, New Jersey. This little paper down here in the right corner was produced by Dr. James Black, a renowned climate scientist, and produced in 1978. This is just one example of many documents, just a couple pages from this 34-page summary of a larger presentation of the greenhouse effect to Exxon employees. And this summary showed us charts like exactly this on how temperatures would increase because of the use of fossil fuels with astonishing accuracy. And so this again is just one report, but in this Exxon Research and Engineering Division, all of these corporate executives knew some pretty deep details about the greenhouse effect. And this summary, for example, talks about doubling CO2 could increase average global temperature 1 to 3 degrees Celsius by 2050 AD. And of course, we're already there. And he also warned that we had about 5 to 10 years of a time window to get the necessary information to act upon this alarm sounding report that he was giving. So here we are, almost 50 years later, dealing with this, of course. And I'm just going to skip like to the next one. I might hop back to show you that particular next document again. But I just want to say that moving forward, it became known to the world, right, that global warming was an issue and it was related to the world of fossil fuels. So the industry had a decision to make in terms of how they were going to sell their products, right, and what kind of choices they were going to make. And so, unfortunately, the decision was that it came about in about the 1980s. They launched a massive, decades-long misinformation campaign and funded that to lie to us, the public, and lawmakers and the media about these catastrophic impacts and spin to a strategy of uncertainty. And so, in this particular memo right here from 1998, this was a direct response to a UN protocol to reduce global emissions, which we've heard many times, right? So this was the version back in the 90s. But you can see this is called Victory Will Be Achieved When, and we call it internally the Victory Memo. And it shows that these points are what they want the victory to be achieved when basically the concept of uncertainty is the conventional wisdom. And that those of us promoting this Kyoto Treaty, that was the UN treaty to reduce emissions, if that seems to be out of touch with reality, then they've done their job. So they really did a fantastic job of making it debatable. And that's what they've done to this science, so that they could keep selling their products. And as I said before, many, many more documents show this. This is not the only one. All of them are on our website under documentation. And by the way, if you ever, wanted someone to come back and talk about these documents in depth, we can absolutely do that, or send webinars that have been pre-recorded, etc. Partners of ours like Union of Concerned Scientists also talk about these documents. I have it on their website, etc. So we're certainly not the only ones with them. But what I wanted to do was just go back to this one on the upper right corner here, because guess what? At the same time, they're putting out false advertising and hiring fake scientists and front groups. They were putting out, this actually came out in the New York Times from Shell, but they were putting out patents to change their own equipment to adapt to the climate impacts that they were directly causing. So, for example, this is raising an oil rig because of the rising sea level rise. So they were lying to us, telling us really real, but certainly paid attention to it enough to invest in their own, changing their own equipment because they knew how real it continues to be, shall I say. Okay, so I'm skipping forward to our cost studies, which is, so again, we are a nonprofit, we're a C3 organization, and we are a toolbox of resources. And one of those is the climate cost studies. And so those are in various forms. We have several state impact reports, which are not in-depth cost studies, more like collecting some pretty current information to show what kinds of impacts states that or dominates these states, and kind of averaging some figures, cost figures that are available at the time. So we have several of those. Um, and we've also done some deeper studies. So what wasn't on this slide at the time was Wisconsin, but we actually have municipal studies for Pennsylvania, Los Angeles County, and all of Wisconsin. Pretty extensive municipal studies on about well, more than a dozen impacts, specific impacts on what exactly municipalities are spending to be able to protect their communities from these particular impacts. I'm kind of doing this all over the place, sorry, but this early one on the left is actually a sea level rise study that was done quite a while ago, but predicting the cost of seawalls being built across the country up until 2040. And then one that I pay attention to quite a bit is the cooling schools study, which I will click on in a second and talk about a little bit more. But in LA County itself, for all these different municipalities, we're looking at stormwater drainage as a top costly um, project. And then when we're talking about extreme heat, right, we're talking about cooling pavements, we're talking about urban canopies, um, and cooling centers is down here for 59 million, HVAC upgrades, et cetera. So there's a whole range of cooling costs that are going on. As far as how exactly each one is calculated, you have to look at the study. Um, Wisconsin, here we go. This is a pie chart for treating disease, in this case, pediatric asthma, West Nile virus, Lyme disease. Um, Again, this is in terms of Medicare and Medicaid costs. Um, and so Wisconsin, this is just one of the pages. There's a lot more to it with their 88 different municipalities in terms of different impacts that need to be treated or dealt with in a different way. So, I just also wanted to let you know that the school studies is, well, as I said, exclusively about cooling schools, right? But it really is based on the number of days over 80 degrees in the school year. And looking at, for about a 55-year span, what the total cost of installing and operating and maintaining that equipment is. Not a simple task to do. So essentially, schools are looking at this enormous cost to be able to um, deal with those overheated days. Chicago's another one, shockingly at over $1.5 billion to cool their schools. Getting to the nitty-gritty of how we're holding these companies accountable, what all these costs means. So when you're looking at these communities and they're stuck with these costs, and you can just see that those are just some of them, right? And they're conservative, excuse me, numbers. How are these communities even attempting to try to pay for this is always my question. So the way they're doing that is in this particular tool is climate litigation. It's not the only tool, but this is one of them that we help folks understand. So in this particular with this particular tool of litigation, more than 1 in 4 Americans live in a community suing. Most of you don't know that you're in one, probably. So this map right here shows you that if you're in one of these 11 states or in the DC or in some of these cities and counties, your community is actually in a process of taking oil to court for their knowledge and their deception. Um, State of Michigan was the latest to file, and city of Chicago, I believe, was the most recent city. So it does happen pretty frequently. We do have a lawsuit sort of library, I call it, online. You can go check out exactly what the geography is. You can learn it by claim, or by status, if they're in, if they're in a motion to dismiss period or not, all this sort of legal terms, something for everybody. But it's pretty easy to use. So you can really go into detail about what is going on exactly with each case. Now, the thing is, there is a threat right now to these cases. There's a threat to Superfund legislation, which is what partnered organizations are working on. Um, there's a threat to even legislation that's starting to come out to really get some control on home insurance rate hiking that's going on, right? These soaring insurance in California, in Colorado, et cetera, where people really can't get home insurance for climate anymore, climate impacts. Um, so there's, legislative tools being used to try to get that under control. And all of that is threatened now because Big Oil wants a what we call get out of jail free card. Essentially, there have been conversations for an entire year that have been documented in the news, showing that the fossil fuel industry wants a liability waiver for any kind of accountability for harms and damages, just like the gun industry. So these headlines have been going on for a long time, such as this. We know for sure that the American Petroleum Institute is actively working to stop climate liability policy, super funds, lawsuits. It's in their agenda for the year. So it is for sure. We knew it was going to come for quite a while, but now we know what it's starting to look like. And by that, I'm getting really specific. So this was about 5 weeks ago or so. Representative Hagman of Wyoming spoke out in a hearing saying that that she wants to initiate a legislative proposal in Congress to actually grant immunity to big oil. So it's very real. And it could look like this if we don't fight it. So this is just a connection to what happened with the gun manufacturing industry, which was 20 years ago, that now prevents folks from being able to hold those corporations accountable for harms, which absolutely has to do with your public health. Federally is not the only threat because states are trying to pass legislation as well to grant these kinds of waivers. So it's not just happening, it's at state level too. Tennessee is on there, Amanda. P.S. And also across the country, this is unpopular, should we just say. Polls show people when they understand the story of the oil and gas companies' history of knowledge of deception, and understand that some kind of immunity is trying to be won here, people are opposed to that. So what's happening, in fact, is communities are getting together all over the country in all 50 states to demand no immunity for big oil. There are 8 states that are kind of anchoring this. So they serve as hubs throughout the country for different actions and just to like spread the information and all of this and hold rallies and be visual and do all these wonderful things. So all of this has been aggregated on the No Immunity for Big Oil website, which I'm definitely going to give you because it gives anybody a choice of something that they can do to try to prevent this immunity from happening. So I'm almost done. The la Things like a national petition where an individual can sign a petition that is being collected in the thousands of names to go to individual congressional members. There are also, excuse me, organizational sign-on letters. Those are due pretty soon, though. They're due like within the week. Uh, Petitions and letters, the letter part, sorry, one for national organizations, and then there's different states there as well to sign on to. There's a whole social media toolkit as well. But if you go to immunity, noimmunityforbigoil.org, you'll see it all. It makes a lot more sense. You can kind of click around and see what everything looks like. I just wanted to make you aware of the exciting calendar going on right now because all of these states are so busy that there are some visual like rallies going on with no immunity signs at No Kings on March 28th. And there's some actions happening from March 30th to April 10th, just in terms of being able to deliver these sign-on letters to congressional members and making, these actions sort of more public and visual with postcards and signs and things of that nature in town halls. Go Minnesota 350, for example. Minnesota's doing a great job, as is Seattle 350. And then, all ideas are welcome. This is just ideas from different people in a toolkit. Doesn't mean those are the only ideas.